Lefties are renowned for having scant regard for the truth, especially when it interferes with their political agenda. That's why they make martyrs of liars and felons, and why they blindly support even the most reprehensible individuals, and why they cover up even outrageous conduct. They are first and foremost collectivists, and when the chips are down, they always side with the tribe, irrespective of the issues. And that's how we came to have the enfeebled Joe Biden as President of the United States. The left so hated Trump and the threat he posed to their power that they decided to back anyone against him. Well, that anyone was Joe Biden. Biden is apparently the most popular US president in history. He received more votes than any other, we're told. And this was despite the fact that he didn't really campaign, and he was also mired in personal and professional scandals. And much of the worst of Biden's disablement and his dodginess were covered up by a crooked media and many dishonest Democrats. We now know that the US law enforcement agencies, including the FBI and the Department of Justice, were also involved in a deception. There is now compelling evidence that Biden solicited a $10 million bribe from a Ukrainian energy company in order to change US policy. Some would say that is treason. At the very least, I'd say it's not appropriate. But it does help support my thesis that Ukraine has been a corrupt money-washing laundromat for US politicians for decades. And that also helps explain the irrational pursuit of conflict escalation in Ukraine by the Biden presidency. They clearly don't want more evidence to emerge about the true extent of US corruption linked to Ukraine. And here's the president announcing an investigation into Elon Musk and his business Twitter, who are at the forefront of exposing the Biden family dealings.
Elon Musk's cooperation and/or technical relationships with other countries is worthy of being looked at. Whether or not he is doing anything inappropriate, I'm not suggesting that. I'm suggesting that it's worth being looked at. But that's all I'll say.
This is classic lefty deflection. You accuse someone else of what you're doing yourself. But outside of sicking government agencies onto his critics, the next best way to avoid scrutiny for Biden is to keep the dogs of war barking for as long as he can. That way, everyone is distracted, and there's a better than good chance the evidence will ultimately be destroyed or forgotten about. And that may explain why hundreds of billions of US taxpayer funds are flowing to Ukraine, despite the US officially not being involved in the war. Unless, that is, you consider sending cluster bombs. Now, they're an ordinance, the use of which the US once described as a war crime, unless sending cluster bombs counts as being involved. I've got to ask, why are the US administration so unconcerned with the number of Ukrainian officials being exposed as corrupt? I mean, we've actually seen some high-ranking officials arrested, and now we know that there are claims that only 1/3 of the weapons actually sent to Ukraine find their way to the front line. There are also credible suggestions that billions of US dollars are finding their way to secret bank accounts, and not just those belonging to the Biden family. Much of this information is suppressed by the same dishonest media that covered up the previous evidence suggesting Biden family criminality. Tens of thousands of Ukrainian men have been slaughtered in recent weeks as the foolish decision by the US and the UK to reportedly reject a negotiated peace settlement has continued to extract a heavy price. Australia is enthusiastically supporting this madness, with hundreds of millions of dollars in cash and kind being sent to Ukraine. In effect, we're backing Biden's war. And it is Biden's war. As I said, it's been reported that the US and the UK rejected a peace deal that was acceptable to both Russia and the Ukraine. Not one of the mainstream media has dared to ask why. Well, I ask why. Why are we supporting a clearly compromised US regime that is teetering on third world status for credibility, for transparency, and for integrity? Ukraine is not our war. And despite the official move across borders by Putin, the genesis of this war goes back to the US-backed coup and the failed promises relating to the Minsk agreement. ethnic Russians were being treated abominably in parts of the Ukraine, and they were promised a decision on their own autonomy. That promise has never been honoured. And it's telling, to me at least, that most of the alternative candidates vying for the US presidency have actually committed to de-escalating the current conflict. I suspect it's because they know that this war is as dishonest as the Biden family business dealings. My sense is that Biden's time as president is coming to an end. He will be abandoned by Democrats, and his family criminality will eventually be pardoned by him on his way out, or by a successor if it's a Democrat. Now, that won't change his legacy, which is leading to the destruction of Ukraine. And I see no reason why Australia should play any further part in the monumental folly of backing a leader who is singularly unfit, physically and morally, for the role they currently hold.